So we all know that the watch bands for the smartwatches are really popular. So I decided to do a template for making these, and finally got around to getting myself one and made a couple watch bands, and honestly I'm kind of hooked. So I thought I would do a YouTube video on how I make the watch bands using my templates so you all can see how easy these are to make. So we have the templates right now in two sizes. We have a 38 millimeter template, and then we have the 42 millimeter template. And the templates come in 4 pieces. It comes with the tongue end. It comes with a buckle end. It comes with a liner for the buckle end because it's a little bit shorter. And then it comes with a tiny little template to make the keeper. Now the 42 millimeter band template set is a little bit longer. It's about, compared to the 38 millimeter, it's a ½ inch longer on the tab end, and it's a ¼ inch longer on the buckle end to help accommodate for men's wrists. So if you are making these for women that have the 42 millimeter, you want to keep this in mind, and we're going to shorten it. And that's actually what we're going to do today. So I'm going to make it out of this printed leather, or this embossed leather. So what we need is, we're going to need a buckle. So these take a 24 millimeter buckle. I got this from the Buckle Guy. This is their style number WB1002, and it's just a nice little buckle. And then you'll obviously need your adapter. I also bought these particular ones from the Buckle Guy, and their style is WB Apple 01 42. So that's what we're going to use for this one. Now you can get buckles and adapters even on places like Amazon. You just want to watch. What I found is that the 42 millimeter adapters, there's 2 different varieties that I've seen. There's ones that accommodate a 24 millimeter strap, and there's ones that accommodate a 22 millimeter strap. So just make sure you're getting the correct adapter for the width of the strap that you want to make. So my 42 millimeter template set is set up to accommodate the 24 millimeter adapter and 24 millimeter buckle. This is the straight one. And then the 38 millimeter template is set up for the 22 millimeter adapters in either the 38 millimeter size or the 42 millimeter size. So you can use this one for both size bands depending on what adapter you use. And then it calls for a 22 millimeter buckle on the 38 millimeter set. So hopefully that makes sense. Like I said, just make sure that you get the right adapter for the buckle width that you're wanting, or the strap width that you're wanting to make. So we're going to do a buckle strap, or a watch strap for the 42 adapters. And we're going to do a straight one. I'm going to use a 42 adapter and the 24 millimeter buckle. However, I want to make this for a woman's wrist, so we're going to shorten it up. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out my strap end. And really, since it's really straight, just straight all the way down. I mean, you could just cut a strip of leather and then go and cut it to length. But I'm going to use the grids that I have on the template to help me shorten it. So, because it's clear, I could position this right over top of my pattern and make sure exactly how I want it to look. Make sure my pattern is centered in my template. And then I'm going to cut, and I'm going to cut from the tip end. We're going to cut this out, and just be very careful when you're cutting directly along the template with your knife. I just use a box knife with a really sharp blade. But just be careful when you're cutting along because you can nick the acrylic. Okay, so here's the total length. Okay, and like I said, now I'm going to go ahead and shorten it half an inch. So I have to take a half an inch off of this. Actually go the wrong direction. So I've got from here, from this tip of my template to my first line is 1/4 of an inch, and then each of those lines are 1/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to line up that tip, 2 lines in, and then I'm just going to take it off the end. So that I just took off a half an inch. So now this is the right length, and this should correspond to the same length that I have set up for my 38mm template, which it does. So there's that end. Now I'm going to do the same thing for, so that was my tip end. So now I'm going to take the other one that's got the hole in it. This is my buckle end. Again, I'm just going to center it up on my pattern. And we're going to take off again, we're going to take off of half an inch. Actually, I take that back. Correct. I need to take off on this end. I'm going to take off only 1/4 of an inch because that's how much I have it lengthened over the 38. So what I could do is I could take my 38 template and just get my length from it. Okay. So just to be clear, so I didn't confuse you guys, we're taking the 42 template and we're taking a half an inch off of the tongue end, and we're taking 1/4 of an inch off the buckle end. Okay, so now what we need to do is I need to mark my hole for my little buckle. And I still, even though I shortened it, I want to have it the same amount on this end. So I'm shortening it from the other end. So I'm gonna line up my template on there, and I'm just gonna mark my hole. Let me find a pen. Okay. Okay. All right, so I got my little hole marked, and I'm just going to take my punch. And punch a hole. Now I found that it's much easier. Sometimes my punch doesn't like to punch through just one layer of the thin leather. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take a piece of scrap and just put underneath of it, put the other one on top, and punch through both. because then I'll get a nice clean hole on my good piece of leather. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to skive the end of this, the buckle end. And we also need to skive the end for the fold back on the tongue end. So we're gonna take our templates and we're just gonna mark, find the correct one here. So on my buckle end, I'm gonna take my template, and even though it's shorter, now I'm gonna go back to, I'm gonna line up this end, and I just wanna mark where I need to skive. So really, it's about a 1/4 of an inch. Next, so that's my first line. The line that I have on there is gonna be the fold line to turn back on the connector end. And then on the other end, the fold is where the hole's at. And I'm gonna skive both of those ends, and then we're gonna attach the connector and the buckle. And then on this end, the end for the tongue, we're gonna line up that, and we're gonna mark where our fold is so that we know where to skive. Okay. Okay, so basically, there's gonna be where we're gonna fold. So we're gonna skive here, and we're gonna attach our connector here. We're going to skive here and turn that back, and that's where our buckle's gonna go. And we're gonna skive here, we're gonna attach our connector and turn that back. And then we're gonna go ahead and get the lining ready. So I'm gonna pause this and move this over so that we can go ahead and skive those ends, and I'll show you how I skive them. Okay, so this is the skiving knife that I use. I picked this up from Lisa Sorrell on her website, Sorrell Notions and Findings. And for little hand jobs like this, versus using my big skiver, I really like this little knife. The key is making sure that you've got a nice polished edge. So I just have some white rouge and a piece of leather. And all we're gonna do is just gonna strop it a little bit on both sides. I will admit, I'm terrible at keeping knives sharp and probably don't do an adequate job of stropping, but still learning that. Okay, so here's gonna be the buckle end, and all we're gonna do is we're just gonna take off. See how easy that just comes off. And actually, sometimes these embossed hides are not fun, but that just skives off so easy. So we want just a real thin end so that when we fold this back, it's nice and thin there so we don't have a bump on the back side. Okay. So I don't know if you can see, there's the skived end of that. So it's really, really nice and thin. Okay, and then we're gonna do the same thing on the other end. Just shy of that fold line. It doesn't take much if your knife is nice and sharp. And also too, I think the trick is like skiving on your granite or your marble, because it makes a big difference. Seems like I tried to do it before on my cutting table and that doesn't work because it kind of gets stuck on it. Okay, and there's the other end. So that one's that piece. Now we're going to do the same thing for the tongue strap. Okay, there you go, just really thin. So that's all there is to it. So I'm gonna put you on hold and move back to the other table. Okay, so now we're gonna attach the hardware to these ends. So what I've got here is I've got some of my favorite glue from Sorrel Notions. It's the Aquilim 315. We're going to use that. So I'm just going to take a little bit and put on the end for the buckle. I just want to make sure I don't get it close to kind of the fold, so that if so just kind of that doesn't hang up on that buckle. So the buckle kind of swivels nice and free. It doesn't get hung up on that glue. And then I'm going to attach some, or put some on the other end, where I'm going to attach the connector hardware. And same thing, I'm just going to leave a little bit of space where my fold line is, so that if I ever want to take the pin out, the hardware off, it'll come out easy, so it doesn't get stuck. Okay, so there's our glue. We're gonna let that sit for a little bit, and we're gonna put a little bit of glue on the end, the tab end for the hardware, for the connectors. Same thing. I like this glue because it doesn't stink. It works really, really good, and it's super easy to clean up. Because it's a water-based glue, and with the silicone brushes, it just dries and it just peels off. And I bought one of these cheap little condiment bottles from Walmart, and this works great to keep it in. Make sure you put a top on it. If you don't, and sometimes you'll get a little glue buildup here on the tip. Once that's dry, you can just peel that right off. So no more nasty glue pots for me. Okay, so we're gonna let that dry for just a second. While we're doing that, we're gonna go ahead and cut the liner for the back. So I've got some oil tanned leather that I picked up from Springfield. And that's, I think, I'm gonna use for the back of this. So we're gonna cut out, I gotta put my glasses on because I'm old, so I can see what I'm doing. So we're gonna cut out the buckle end. And I just find it easier just to cut the whole thing out, and then we'll go back and shorten what we need to shorten. Make sure that when you're cutting these out that your template doesn't shift, because it sometimes can slide around. They make these really cool little silicone discs that you can use on the back side of your templates that you can stick on, and those will help it from sliding around on the leather. You can get those on Amazon. Okay, so here's our liner, and make sure everything looks good. Okay. All right. So if you notice on the template, it has a line that says line to here. So let's go ahead and mark that first. And we're gonna cut that off. So what I'm gonna do is on the back side, I'm just gonna make a line where that line is at. Make a mark. And then I'm just gonna move my template to that. Now I also want to take off another 1/2 inch. So we're gonna actually, if you look at here, so we're gonna then take, so that brings that 1 inch and 3/4 of an inch in is where the line to here line is at. And then I'm gonna move it another 2 lines to count for the shortening it a 1/2 inch. Okay, so that should be so when I line these up, you'll see that's gonna be about right. By the time I fold this over, that's where I want my lining to be. So that's for that one. And then I'm going to use, now for the other end, I actually already have a separate template that I made just for that liner. And the reason I did that is when I originally did the 38mm template set, it has just a very slight taper to it. Whereas the 42 is straight, but the other one's got a very, very slight taper to it. So I just made a separate template for it, and just to keep it easy, I made the same thing for the 42. So okay, so we're just going to cut that out, but then we're going to actually shorten it a 1/4 of an inch, because on this end I shortened it 1/4. So we're going to have to shorten the liner also. So we took off a 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so now we've got the liners for both of our pieces. And we will have to go and skive both of those ends as well on the short one, and then the one end on the tongue one. But I'm gonna go ahead and attach this hardware now, and then I'm gonna turn it off and I'll go back and skive those. So, all right, so we're gonna put our hardware on. Our little tongue of our buckle goes in the hole. Just make sure you fold it and the edges line up really good. And make sure your tongue of your buckle is going the right direction. Okay, so there's that. And then we're gonna get a connector out. Now, I don't know if how many are iWatch or Apple Watch people, but there is a top and bottom to these. So this is the top the one with the little silver in the center, that's the bottom, because that's what's gonna go slide into the watch. So make sure that when you put these on, that you put them on the right direction. And these particular connectors from the buckle guy, they don't have a pin. They have two little tiny star screws here. So make sure if you buy these, that you buy the tool that goes with them. So if you do have to take this apart, you have the tool that goes with them that you can get in and unscrew those. I think it's like 40 cents. So just make sure when you get them that you buy that little tool. Because they don't come with them. Now some of the ones on Amazon, the tool is included. All right, so we're gonna put that on and fold back at our fold line. Okay. So there's one side. So I just make sure that when I put these down that I have them the right direction. I'll put my connectors side by side so I don't get one upside down. Okay. Okay, so there's that, it's glued. Okay, I'm gonna put you on hold and I'm gonna go ahead and skive these real quick and I'll be right back. Okay, so I got my ends skived on my liners, both of those. So I got nice, super nice thin end to them. And then what I did also is I went ahead and fitted them, make sure that they end where I want them to end. I didn't need to do anything, so that's about how much I'm gonna have on this. And then this one I did have to shorten up just a little bit. But once I get that glued together, that will be perfect. All right, so now we just need to glue these. We're pretty much almost done, actually. So we just gotta glue these and stitch them and make our little keeper, and that's it. So these are super easy, I think, to do. You do need to have a machine though that can handle the thin leathers, because the big heavy machines probably aren't gonna work really good. I tried to sew mine on my Singer, my 201, and although it can easily go through the leather, it really did not like the glue at all. And it was hanging up. So I need to figure out what to do. I don't know if I need to maybe try to find a little bit bigger needle, put a little bigger hole so the thread has got a little bit more room, or what. So I've got to figure that out yet. But fortunately I've got my class 20 that can handle this. And we'll do that in a second. Another thing, I mean, they're so small, they can easily be hand sewn, and honestly, they'd probably give you a much higher perceived value if they're hand sewn, because I just think that the underside looks so much nicer. No matter what I do on my class 20, I just can't get my bobbin to look nice. I mean, the thread looks okay, but my holes, you can definitely tell that the holes are getting pushed out, and I think it's probably the needle, but I haven't taken time to do some research on that. So what you could do, you could always use your big machine to put a smaller needle in it and use it to go around, and don't thread it. Just punch your holes and then go back and just hand stitch it. Would be pretty easy. Okay. Okay, so I'm just gonna put a real thin layer of glue on these, on all the pieces. We're just gonna let that dry for a second. And I was talking about, here's another one that I did, a band that I did, and instead of using a buckle, I used the button. And then I put a whip stitch around the edge. And so I've been wearing this one, and I really like this one as well. The one thing that you have to keep in mind is when you're using the button is to make sure you get a good length that you need it to be, because it does make a difference not having this spacing. So you do need to adjust for that. So what I did is, so I just turned back where my buckle would have been, and I added my button here. There's my back side of this. So this is shorter now than what the finished length would have been with that buckle on it. It's probably about 3/4 of an inch. So you just got to make sure that you keep that in mind when you're doing this end. So I don't think I did when I made this one, and then I went back and realized how much. So like I'm wearing this one. This is the 38. I've got my wrists are about 6 1/4. I'm wearing it at the second tightest hole, and so on this one, my holes are spaced further apart because they're bigger, so I had to make them further apart. And actually I wear this one on like I think the third one here, and not this one. So anyway, so just make sure that if you're gonna adapt the template for these buttons, I would highly suggest that you do a trial before you make one for your customers, so that you know the adjustments that need to be made. And then also, especially if you do something like the whip stitch, that does take up quite a bit of room on the wrist, so make sure you account for that. And then also you'll need to make sure that your keeper is bigger. But anyway, so I made that one. And then I've been playing around with another layout idea of one like this. This is a wider band. So this is still for the 38, but it's a 1.25 inch. And then the strap tucks to the back. So this is nice if you want to tool, a brand or any tooling on it. So I haven't decided. I haven't got this template out yet, so this probably will be available. I just have to kind of fine tune some things there. Another thing that somebody had suggested, if you do something like this, is these might be better suited for custom orders, so that you don't have to leave such a long tab and that you could actually just extend this whole thing the same width all the way down. So anyway, I'm just still kind of playing around with this one. I just made this one yesterday, so I want to wear it and see how I like it. Okay, so these I think are dry. So we're gonna go ahead and put our liner on, and really just want to make sure we get it really nice and lined up with the edges. There's that one. And then on this other end, I like to start at the pointed end. And then work my way to the connector end. Just make sure you get your edges lined up really good. Okay, there's that. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go and do some sanding, just to kind of sand those edges a little bit, and then we're gonna go ahead and sew it. So I'm gonna be right back. All right, so got everything ready to go. Basically, we've got our liner attached, glued. I went ahead and I sanded the edges. I also just ran a beveler just down there on the back side. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna sew these. I ran a test sew on some scrap to make sure I have my bobbin or my top thread tension adjusted, and it looks really good. So I'm using 69 thread on the top and the bottom. I'm using a number 18 needle, and because I'm using thinner thread, I didn't adjust my bobbin at all, but I did tighten up my top tension since my thread is thinner than what it was set for, because I normally leave 138 set up in here. So all right, kind of where you start is personal preference. I like to start up here and go down alongside my connector and then around. I would prefer to have my start and stop kind of up in this corner versus at the tip. Another option, you could do it at the tip if you want, but I don't know. I kind of like the tip to be on the back side to look good, and not have the knot. So I just usually put the knot up here. So I'm going to put my needle down where I want to start. I think usually my seam allowance on these is about 1/8 of an inch from the edge is where I want to sew. And I don't get quite as close to the connector so that I can just make sure that I get my liner sewn down. The key on these is to sew slow. And I've got my stitch length on my class 20 at about 4.5. I usually hand crank around the tip just so I get a nice stitch, and then I just want sometimes I'd lift up and just move it just slightly just so I can get my needle down at the tip right where I want it. mess over here. Hold on one second. Okay. I had another spool of thread up here on my holder and it got wound up around my wheel, so I have to go back and get that. It's because it's all threading around there. Okay. That looks really good. All right, so there's my stitching on the front and there's the back. So we'll tie that off. Okay, now this one, we'll do the same thing. And I like to end up right in the same hole that I started. Okay, there's that. There's the back side. So really, the only thing we have left to do now is we're going to trim our threads and then make our keeper and do our edges. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. So what I did while we were away is I went ahead and so we had it sewn, and then I went and I painted my edge and I made my keeper. And what I did on my keeper to do my knot is I just punched a hole right in the center of the keeper, and then I just did kind of a figure eight back and forth to kind of secure that. You can also get those little staples if you want to do that. I just think it's a little cleaner. So anyway, all we have to do now is punch our holes. So we're going to take our template, we're going to line them up and mark our holes. And for this particular one, I know that this is going to go to a lady, so I'm not going to worry about like the end hole. I'll probably just punch the holes like the second, third, and go to the end here. And even though I shortened it, I'm still going to I'm going to line up my template with the end and punch the holes, because these actually line up the same from the tip. So go ahead and mark it, and I'm just going to ignore the very first one for this. let's test, I'm gonna do a test punch, make sure my holes are about the size I want it. Yep, that works good. So that's the second to the smallest on my punch. I'm gonna put a little piece of leather behind it so I get nice. Just make sure I got my first, okay. Okay, those look good. Okay, there you have it. There's the finished watch band. I would put it on mine, but it's not gonna fit. Let's just see how it, I never even put those other connectors in to see if they'll even, yeah, it'll work for pictures. Just a little bit. Hang on, I got this. And there you go. Feels really good. So if you have any questions, post them below. I will put a link in the description for the templates if you want to go grab them. Honestly, these are a great way to use up scraps. Super easy to make. So like I said, if you have any questions, post them below. If you do buy the template, make sure that if you're on Facebook, that you go to our Facebook tip group and join there. And then if you have any questions, you can also post questions in the tip group and get some help from all the other customers. So I do appreciate it. Thanks for everything and have fun.